Let's go live to Brisbane. Here's Sussan Ley.
Paris Agreement as part of that. But I point once again to Labor's trifecta of energy failures: prices up, reliability down, and emissions flatlining.
Guarantee prices will come down if you haven't done costings.
Well, let's look at the cost so far to Australians. To get to this point in time, Labor's train wreck of an energy policy has cost $75 billion. And to get to its 2035 announced targets, the BCA estimates another $530 billion. Meanwhile, prices have gone up 40%. Affordability is at record lows, and people are struggling. We need to put affordable energy as a priority in our policy, and that's what we've done, and that's where the government's failures are. So cost is a massively important consideration, but Australians are really feeling an enormous cost right now, but absolutely no benefit.
But how can you guarantee that the price will come down? We've heard that before from politicians over decades, and it hasn't happened.
Well, let's explain. I'd like to explain how you can start to get energy costs down. You have to increase generation capacity. And our capacity scheme will allow, in a technology-neutral way, more fuels, more types of energy into the system. And one of those that has been completely overlooked, it seems, by the government is gas. We need to step on the gas. We need to recognise the abundant supplies of gas in this country, under our feet, around our land, and instead of just exporting that gas to our nearest neighbours and elsewhere to help them decarbonise, we need to use Australian gas for Australians. Right now, we're the second largest exporter of Australian gas, maybe the third largest in the world, and we're about to import gas through gas terminals. That doesn't make any sense. And Australian families who are looking at those bills around their kitchen table now, knowing that that additional supply of gas could start to lower those bills, put downward pressure on prices, must surely be bewildered at this policy. So our policy includes an East Coast domestic gas reservation scheme.
The Labor government has introduced the solar share scheme, which, if used strategically, can reduce energy prices. Why would the LNP go towards untouched LNG reserves over these green energy sources?
Well, it's not correct to say that we're going for any technology over another. The whole point of our plan is that it is technology neutral, and it does recognise the importance of the transition to more affordable types of energy while keeping reliable generation in the system. And that is so vital, because without reliable generation and dispatchable power, you don't have reliable electricity for households and businesses, and more importantly, you don't have affordable bills, and you have prices continuing to spike. Part of our policy is indeed commercial rooftop solar, and I might ask Dan to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have always said that we're going to take a technology neutral approach, and one of the things we think we need to see more of when it comes to commercial properties like this is making sure that we're encouraging solar on these commercial rooftops, because there are vast rooftops right across suburban capital cities here in Australia where we could get more solar on rooftops, which would obviously benefit those businesses and also would basically benefit their ability to put downward pressure on their energy prices. And can I just talk about the question about cost just for 1 minute? What we need to hear from the government is, what is the cost of your net zero by 2050 plan? Because we haven't heard from the government what their cost is. What is the cost to the electricity sector of your net zero by 2050 plan? What is the cost to the land transport sector of your net zero by 2050 plan? What is the cost to the agriculture sector of your net zero by 2050 plan? What is the cost to the industrial sector of your net zero by 2050 plan? You're in government, you're embarking on this pursuit. You tell us what the costs are, because those costs are being hidden. And as we saw from those retailer CEOs, those large energy generators and large energy retailers over the last couple of days, the government are not being upfront with the Australian people about what the costs will be. They are hiding the costs. So these questions around costs need to be asked of the government, because they're the ones who are pursuing this plan of net zero by 2050.
And the main question, may I just also add to that, the main question the Prime Minister needs to answer: when are electricity prices coming down, Prime Minister? And every time our friends in the media have an opportunity to ask the Prime Minister or his ministers this question, they absolutely must. When are electricity prices coming down? Because remember, for 2 elections, the Prime Minister stood there and told all of us that electricity prices would be coming down by $275. In fact, they've gone up by $1,300.
But even the Australian Chamber of Commerce has come out and said they don't believe the prices will come down, that your policy will not work. And you still can't give us a percentage on how much you will bring prices down.
Well, I don't agree with your paraphrasing, but I do agree that our affordable energy plan is all about getting more supply into the system. And the laws of supply and demand dictate that when you have more supply, when you have more reliable generation, when you don't have just renewables, which is the approach this government is taking, you clearly will have reliable, affordable power. And coming back to the approach that Labor is taking and the cost blowouts in developing a renewable energy grid, you can see the failures that are already in place only getting worse. Remember, this government has said we will get to 82% renewables in electricity by 2030. Experts say the best we could do is 58%. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is not fronting up and he's not fessing up.
But the principles specifically, will they look at the categories of visa that you will reduce?
Well, I said when I became leader that we would work on principles that we would outline before Christmas on our migration settings. That's because the migration numbers into Australia are far too high. And Labor has got this all wrong. Every announcement they make, they re-announce. Every number they give, they need to revise. What we know is there's 1.8 million people coming in over 5 years. That's in their budget paper. And we also know that their net overseas migration figure is 100,000 higher than it was pre-COVID levels. So we have to have a balance between infrastructure and people coming to Australia. We have to recognise, as every community we speak to does, that the pressures on communities, whether it be housing, whether it be roads, whether it be public transport, schools, hospitals, those pressures are out of balance with migration. This is not the fault of any migrant or migrant community. As a migrant to Australia myself, I value the opportunity I had, as I know all our migrants do. We have to get the balance right, and we will have more to say on that in coming weeks.
Opposition Leader, Jacinta Price has come out swinging and fully accused, bitter, and effectively called her a raging lefty, suggesting your colleague should be undermining you. Is any of that fair?
Well, I'm not commenting on comments on commentary. I will not lose focus for a single second on my affordable energy and responsible emissions plan, because this is where the focus of Australian families and households is in the lead up to Christmas, where they are struggling, where they face uncertainty, and when they are worried about not just themselves but the next generation. And we are worried too. We don't want the next generation to inherit a lower standard of living than we have. And right now, under this government's policy settings, that unfortunately is the case. We need to turn that around, and affordable energy is front and centre.
It is specifically about you, though. They're arguing over whether people are undermining you and whether that's appropriate. Surely you have a comment on that.
I'm not commenting on commentary. I've answered your question.
One thing. Should the PM call an emergency national cabinet over health funding?
Well, isn't it extraordinary that the Prime Minister is mismanaging the economy so badly that he has now been forced to write to health ministers demanding that they have fewer sick people turn up in their hospitals? Really? What on earth is going on, Prime Minister? You are responsible for so much, and yet you are writing to state premiers and health ministers to demand changes to what goes on in the state public health system. Well, we are on the side of Australians who are struggling, And we understand how tough it is for families, especially when children become sick. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.